Well, I have all my parts on order that I need to put this back together. And while I'm waiting for them, I figure I should probably get this thing ready to accept the new parts. So I've still got a big problem here, which is that I've got the remnants of this pulley has to come off, so I can put the new pulley on. The remnants of this bearing has to come off, and the remnants of this bearing has to come off. Now this bearing appears to have only been held on by the two set screws that I removed, and it does not appear to be keyed to the shaft. So it appears like the set screws are the only thing responsible for actually keeping that bearing captive to the shaft. So with the set screws off, that bearing should be able to slide off of here, but it's seized onto the shaft. And the problem I have is that there's like no room behind here to grab onto it with a bearing puller. And so I'm not going to be able to pull this off this direction from what I could see. Over on this side, I got even a deeper mystery. We've got the bearing, again, two set screws that I removed, but this bearing is sitting behind the pulley. This is the hub that's left behind from the pulley that I cut off. The pulley is keyed to the shaft, which makes sense because that's the pulley's being driven by the belt, and that's the highest possibility of slippage. So they wanted that to be keyed. So I could see the key. My problem is I have no idea what's supposed to be holding this pulley onto the shaft. Is it simply a press fit with nothing else? Because there doesn't appear to be any sign of any set screws or anything, grub screws, that would have been in there to hold that on. So it's just kind of weird. So I think this might be just pressed on, which would mean that you should be able to press this out. Again, same problem. Really nothing to grab onto here. And then, of course, mounting it in the press somehow so that I can, press this shaft out of some of these parts is going to be tricky. I mean, if I had some way I could support this and then just press down right here, that would be ideal. But I've barely got enough meat left on this pulley to do anything. So I might be able to mock something up kind of elaborate on the press and see if I could do that. Maybe I should try that first, because the other possibility was, I know that based on the parts diagram that the shaft is a separate piece from this. There's actually a bolt goes right through here. So if I take this bolt out, believe it or not, this impeller is supposed to come off the shaft too, but I have a feeling that that's probably also seized onto the shaft. So theoretically, if I took this bolt out and I put this down on the press like this and had this in the opening down below on the press base, I should be able to push this shaft down and out of this and this and this, and the only thing that would come out would be the shaft with just this piece left on it. And then I could turn it around in the press and press the shaft out of that. But in order for me to do that, I would have to be putting on enough force to make this shaft move through 1, 2, 3 seized parts. And I'm worried about how much force this impeller base could take. I would obviously want to support it really close here. Put a donut-shaped piece right here and use that for support. But for starters, let me see if I can come up with a way to hold this in the press so that I can just try and push this out of this piece by itself. All right, so here's my setup. And I've got these really big pieces of steel here. And, when I look at the lines of force and how they're being transferred to the pieces below and everything, I feel pretty good about this setup. The weakest link, really, is the flange itself. All I have for bearing surfaces for this to rest on as I'm pressing on this shaft is this little lip. This side's got more meat left on it. This has only got this one little lip here. Now I'm thinking I really wish I had left more of the pulley on there. Although, you know, you can only go out so far before this thin metal right here is going to bend anyways. So these little pieces right here are scrap cutters, and they make good little parallels because they're the same size. So, well, so I'm just going to find something that will fit in that center right there that I can use to press, and we'll give this thing a shot. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch or so between the bottom of the impeller here and the cross members of the press. So that's going to give me enough clearance to push that out, you know, pretty far before this bottoms out. If I have to, I'll just reset and put some more spaces underneath here, but I want to see whether or not this is going to even move at all. Oh yeah, that's coming right out. Beautiful. So let's see if I can get this all the way out before this bottoms out on me. That's it. Okay. All right, a couple more spaces in there. I think we got just enough height now. Should be able to finish getting this all the way out. There we go. Here's the pulley. What's left of it. Now, I wonder if I can get that that bearing off. It just isn't really enough of a lip right here for me to be able to make that work. So I'm going to have to go with plan B, which is press this shaft out from this and this simultaneously. So in preparation for doing that, I've got to remove this bolt. As I expected, the bolt is so rusty that the end with the nut just snapped right off. The good news is I was able to work it carefully back and forth and actually get the bolt to actually start rotating some before that snapped. So now that that's snapped off and is completely out of my way, I should be able to just knock this out with a punch. Beautiful. All right. So now, again, theoretically, I should be able to put this on the press, push this shaft out of this and this. All right, so my hope is now that I've got enough support underneath the impeller here. I'm right up, I got these two big pieces of steel right up against the collar, that what's left of the old bearing on the other side there, so that I've got my support as close to the central lines of force as possible, and hopefully that'll minimize the ability for this plate to want to try and do this. I expect this to be pretty seized, so I expect resistance at the beginning, but hopefully it'll start moving without too much force having to be applied. I'm going to get my flashlight so I can look right down this opening here and see if I could see any movement. Well, I just could not get those sleeves off of that shaft on that assembly to get the new bearings on, so I need more heat. I use that MAP gas torch, and I was able to get those fittings pretty hot, you know, some redness to them, kind of like a dark cherry red, I guess, but I think I need more heat. So I'm going to use my Rosebud. It's a number 6 Victor Rosebud, and I should finally be able to use that today, because I finally get everything straightened out with my oxyacetylene setup. I had all kinds of problems. First I ran out of oxygen, so I got more oxygen. Then, come to find out, I was out of acetylene. So I got more acetylene. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, my oxygen regulator failed. So I had to rebuild that. So now everything seems to be working okay. Oh, and get this. Those of you who watch my channel regularly know that I had a Dodge Dakota, 2003 Dodge Dakota pickup truck. Notice I said had. Well, that's gone now. I drove that to air gas to get the oxyacetylene tank filled up, and a freeze plug blew out and all the coolant leaked out of it. And for those of you who know those motors, it's the V6, and on the V6 Dakota there is a freeze plug that is located low on the block directly behind the passenger side motor mount. And the only way to replace that freeze plug is to remove the motor mount, which makes that, what should be a simple job, turn into a nightmare job. It's going to take several hours to do. I was already thinking of selling the truck anyways, so I put the truck up for sale on Marketplace for $750. Some people came down, took a look at it, decided they, wanted to buy it for their kid, who's, I guess he's a mechanic, and the family's mechanics, so I guess they're all going to put their heads together and do the work and get this to be a running truck for the guy. I ended up taking $700 cash for it. So it was a title truck. It was, registered and inspected. So until that freeze plug blew out, it was a good running truck. So it's gone now. So I'm down one pickup truck. But I still get the old 93 Chevy, the old 93 GMC diesel in the weeds over there, toying with the idea of hauling that out and resurrecting that from the dead. And of course, I've still got my trusty Dodge Ram with the 5.9 liter Cummins. But this isn't an episode about trucks, so shut up, Steve. Light this candle. Number 6 torch is kind of a fuel hog. Chart says that it should be run at 12 to 15 pressure for the acetylene and 15 for the oxygen. Well, it wasn't easy, but I finally got this part out of the impeller. So it's clear to me that this piece right here should not have been a press fit into that impeller, that the intention was that the bolt that went through here was what locked the impeller to this. So it's going to take quite a bit of work on the inside of that bore and the outside of this to make that happen again. But before I can do anything like that, I've got to get the remnants of the inner race of this bearing off of here. This is one I sliced all the way through and still didn't want to give up the ghost. Looks like I may have hit the shaft a little bit there too, but I'm not too worried about that. So now that it's out, I can put it in the press and just support this lip right here on both sides and should be able to press this right out.